Welcome to this remarkable war survival chronicle, where forgotten civilian wisdom met the collapse of armies and nations. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're listening from, and the exact time this story found you. These quiet war stories often travel farther than battles ever did. In the municipal archives of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, discovered in 1967 during a routine basement clearing, lay a collection of water-stained documents that would challenge everything historians thought they knew about civilian resistance during the harsh winter of 1945. The discovery occurred purely by accident when maintenance workers removing flood-damaged furniture from the town hall basement noticed an unusual hollow sound beneath what appeared to be solid flooring. Beneath loose floorboards, wrapped in multiple layers of oiled canvas and secured with copper wire that had resisted decades of moisture, emerged the detailed account of Cordelia Vance, a 34-year-old widow whose husband, mining engineer Lieutenant Marcus Vance, had died at Normandy 8 months earlier. The preservation was remarkable. Despite decades in a damp basement subject to seasonal flooding, the documents remained legible, their pencil markings clear against yellowed paper that had somehow resisted complete deterioration. The collection included 17 handwritten pages documenting daily survival procedures with meticulous attention to detail, 3 hand-drawn maps showing tunnel layouts with precise measurements in feet and inches, a municipal supply ledger with entries spanning November 1944 through March 1945, recording every resource transaction, and most remarkably, a detailed inventory list written in multiple distinct handwritings, suggesting collaborative record-keeping among several individuals operating under extreme secrecy. Additional materials included sketched diagrams of improvised heating systems drawn with engineering precision, water collection methods showing calculations for daily consumption rates, food preservation techniques with temperature measurements and timing schedules, and structural modifications documented through before and after sketches that revealed sophisticated understanding of underground construction principles. What made these papers extraordinary was not their historical value alone, but their methodical documentation of a survival system that operated completely outside official military knowledge for 4 consecutive months. Every entry was dated using military-style notation. Every resource allocation was calculated to the ounce. Every tunnel modification was mapped with surveyor-level accuracy. This was not the desperate scrawling of panicked civilians, but the systematic documentation of a sophisticated underground community that had successfully hidden from the outside world while maintaining operational security that would have impressed professional intelligence operatives. The handwriting analysis, conducted in 1968 by document experts at the Pennsylvania State Archives, confirmed that multiple individuals had contributed to the record-keeping, suggesting a level of organization and collaboration that contradicted official assumptions about civilian capabilities during wartime emergencies. The paper quality, ink composition, and writing instruments used were all consistent with materials available in small Pennsylvania towns during the 1940s, eliminating any possibility of post-war fabrication. Millbrook in late 1944 was not a strategic military target, yet it found itself completely cut off from the outside world when early November, snowstorms collapsed the main railroad bridge and blocked the only accessible mountain road for nearly 4 consecutive months. The town, population exactly 237 according to the 1944 municipal census conducted in September, sat in a narrow valley surrounded by steep hills that channeled winter winds into devastating storms capable of depositing several feet of snow in a matter of hours. The railroad bridge, a wooden trestle structure originally built in 1898 and reinforced multiple times during the early 1900s, had been weakened by years of deferred wartime maintenance when steel and lumber were diverted to military construction projects. The bridge could not withstand the combination of heavy snow loads exceeding design specifications and repeated freeze-thaw cycles that created structural stress beyond the capacity of aging timber supports. The mountain road, officially designated State Route 47 in transportation records, was a narrow winding pathway carved into hillsides with inadequate drainage systems and no snow removal equipment stationed locally. When the first major storm deposited 37 inches of snow between November 8th and November 12th, followed immediately by a week of temperatures consistently below 5 degrees Fahrenheit, the road became completely impassable for any motor vehicle larger than a motorcycle, and even those were rendered useless by ice formation and wind-driven snow accumulation. Subsequent storms throughout November and December added successive layers of ice and additional snow accumulation that would not clear until late March when spring thaw finally began. Each storm increased the total snow depth and created conditions that made any attempt at road clearing impossible with available equipment. The combination of extreme cold, continuous snowfall, and high winds created a natural barrier that effectively isolated Millbrook from all outside contact. No supply convoys could reach the town. No mail service functioned, since postal trucks could not navigate the blocked roads. No telegraph communication was possible, as the telephone lines had been damaged by falling trees weighted down with ice and snow. No radio contact existed, since the town lacked any official broadcasting equipment, and civilian radios could not reach distant stations through the atmospheric interference created by the severe weather patterns. For the 237 civilians remaining in town, winter became an enemy more immediate and dangerous than any foreign army. Food supplies in individual households had been calculated for normal circumstances with regular resupply opportunities through weekly shopping trips to regional markets. Heating fuel had been rationed since October due to wartime shortages that diverted coal and oil to military installations. Medical supplies were minimal, with the last physician having departed in August to serve in military hospitals where his skills were desperately needed. The local general store had closed permanently in September when its owner, Harold Pemberton, left to work in munitions factories in Pittsburgh, where wages were substantially higher than small-town retail profits. The post office operated from the kitchen of Postmaster Ruth Caldwell, but without mail delivery or pickup services, it served no practical function beyond maintaining federal employment records. The volunteer fire department had lost 6 of its 12 members to military service and war work, leaving insufficient personnel to respond to emergencies. The one remaining police officer, Deputy Sheriff Glenn Morrison, was a 62-year-old man with no communication equipment and no means to request assistance from county authorities. Most critically, the town lacked any coordinated emergency response plan or leadership structure capable of managing extended isolation. No individual or organization had been designated to coordinate resource distribution, manage fuel allocation, or organize collective survival efforts. Each household faced the prospect of surviving independently through an unprecedented crisis with whatever supplies they happened to possess when the isolation began. Cordelia Vance lived alone in a 2-story house on Maple Street, 3 blocks from what had once been the town's commercial center before business owners departed for wartime employment opportunities. The house, built in 1919 by a coal company supervisor, featured a full basement with stone walls and a coal storage area that connected directly to the abandoned delivery tunnel system through a wooden door that most residents had forgotten existed. Her husband's military pension had stopped arriving in October when Postal Service became irregular, leaving her with exactly $47 in savings and food supplies calculated to last approximately 6 weeks under normal consumption patterns. The financial situation was typical for war widows whose support systems had been disrupted by the same communication failures that isolated the entire community from outside assistance. Her immediate neighbors consisted mostly of elderly couples and other war widows, facing identical circumstances with varying degrees of preparation and resource availability. The Hendrickson family, ages 68 and 71, lived 2 houses east with limited mobility due to severe arthritis that made manual labor impossible, but they possessed extensive medical supplies accumulated over years of managing chronic health conditions, including prescription medications, bandages, antiseptic preparations, and basic surgical instruments. Widow Marguerite Beaumont, age 42, occupied the house directly across the street with access to her late husband's extensive tool collection, including carpentry equipment, mechanical tools, and metalworking supplies, but minimal food reserves beyond what could be purchased with her limited household budget. Retired schoolteacher Vivian Ashworth, 74 years old, lived alone with substantial supplies of candles manufactured locally before the war, lamp oil purchased in bulk during peacetime when prices were reasonable, and an extensive personal library including books that provided both entertainment and practical information about food preservation, basic medical care, and weather prediction techniques. But what the official municipal records failed to document, and what Cordelia's papers revealed in meticulous detail, was the existence of a pre-war coal delivery tunnel system that connected 14 houses in the Central District through a comprehensive network of underground passages originally designed for efficient winter fuel distribution during the 1920s. Built in 1923 by the Millbrook Coal and Ice Company under the supervision of German immigrant engineer Klaus Zimmermann, these tunnels had been carved through the soft limestone substrate that lay beneath the town's foundation layer. The tunnel system, according to Cordelia's detailed measurements and carefully drawn maps, consisted of a main artery running east-west for approximately 340 feet, with 7 branching passages extending north and south to individual basement connections in participating houses. Each tunnel measured roughly 4 feet in height and 3 feet in width, dimensions sufficient for coal carts pulled by men, but requiring adult humans to move in a crouched position that became uncomfortable during extended travel. The tunnels featured wooden support beams positioned at precisely 8-foot intervals, brick-lined drainage channels along the floors to prevent water accumulation, and ventilation shafts that emerged discreetly in backyards behind landscaping features designed to conceal their existence from casual observation. The engineering was sophisticated for its time, incorporating principles of mine construction that ensured structural stability and adequate air circulation for the intended commercial purpose. The system had been abandoned during the 1930s when individual oil heating became popular and more convenient than coal storage, and most tunnel entrances had been sealed with wooden boards and forgotten by property owners who found oil delivery more practical than maintaining coal storage facilities. Many residents were completely unaware that their basements contained access points to an underground network that spanned nearly half the town. Cordelia's husband, mining engineer Lieutenant Marcus Vance, had shown her the tunnel access in their basement in early 1941, explaining the engineering principles behind the construction and pointing out that the limestone walls would remain structurally sound indefinitely if properly maintained and protected from moisture infiltration. He had been fascinated by the construction techniques and had spent several evenings exploring the accessible portions of the system, documenting its layout, and assessing its potential for various uses. When the snows began falling in November 1944, and when the first week passed without any external contact or indication that outside assistance would arrive, Cordelia made a decision that would prove crucial for the survival of 43 people over the next 4 months. Drawing on knowledge her husband had shared and engineering principles he had taught her during their marriage, she began mapping the tunnel system with the systematic precision required for underground survey work. Working exclusively by candlelight during the pre-dawn hours between 3:30 and 6 a.m. when surface activity was minimal and the risk of discovery was lowest, using tools from her husband's workshop, including a surveyor's measuring chain, magnetic compass, and spirit level. Cordelia began the painstaking process of clearing debris from tunnel sections that had been sealed and abandoned for over a decade. Her handwritten notes described the laborious work in extraordinary detail, removing fallen timbers that had accumulated moisture and begun to rot, creating safety hazards that could cause tunnel collapse, reinforcing weak support structures with salvaged lumber from an abandoned chicken coop behind her house, and creating new ventilation shafts using kitchen utensils, metal piping salvaged from various household sources, and improvised bellows constructed from leather and wood to ensure adequate air circulation. Each tunnel section required between 12 and 15 hours of work spread across multiple nights to avoid detection by neighbors who might not understand the purpose of underground activity. The process involved first clearing accumulated debris, including coal dust that had created respiratory hazards, fallen rocks that blocked passages, and animal nests that had been established during years of abandonment by various creatures seeking shelter. Next came comprehensive structural assessment, checking each wooden support beam for rot, insect damage, or structural weakness that could lead to catastrophic failure, and determining which sections needed reinforcement before they could safely bear the weight of regular human passage and potential supply storage. This assessment required knowledge of load-bearing calculations and structural engineering that Cordelia had learned from her husband during his explanations of mine safety procedures. Ventilation presented the most complex engineering challenge of the entire project. The original system had been designed for coal storage, not human habitation, and many of the air shafts had been blocked by surface construction projects, landscaping changes, or natural debris accumulation over the years of abandonment. Without adequate ventilation, the tunnels would become death traps, accumulating carbon dioxide and toxic gases that could kill occupants within hours. Cordelia solved this critical problem by creating new ventilation points using metal pipes, salvaged from various household sources, including old plumbing, stovepipes, and guttering materials. She disguised the surface openings as garden features, drainage systems, or utility installations, ensuring that fresh air could circulate effectively without creating visible evidence of underground activity that might attract unwanted attention from potential external observers. By December 1st, according to her daily logs that recorded every hour of work and every resource expenditure, she had established secure connections to 7 houses, creating a communication and resource-sharing network that would revolutionize civilian survival capabilities in Millbrook. The network included her own house as the central coordination point due to its advantageous location and her technical knowledge, the Hendrickson residence with its extensive medical supplies, Marguerite Beaumont's house with comprehensive tools and workshop equipment, Vivian Ashworth's home with educational materials and lamp oil, and 3 additional households that contributed various specialized resources, including preserved foods, mechanical equipment, and fuel supplies. The operational protocols that emerged from this network demonstrated sophisticated understanding of resource management, security procedures, and community coordination that would have impressed professional military logistics coordinators. Widows contributed preserved foods from their late husband's hunting activities, including jarred venison that could provide protein for weeks, smoked fish prepared using traditional methods, and preserved vegetables stored in root cellars that maintained appropriate temperatures throughout the winter months. Elderly couples provided medical supplies accumulated over years of managing chronic health conditions, including prescription medications for pain management and infection treatment, sterile bandages and gauze, antiseptic preparations for wound care, and basic medical instruments that could be used for emergency procedures. These supplies represented a comprehensive medical capability that exceeded what most isolated communities could access during wartime shortages. Retired schoolteacher Vivian Ashworth contributed candles manufactured locally before the war began, lamp oil purchased in bulk during peacetime when prices were reasonable, and books that provided both entertainment during long winter evenings and practical information about food preservation techniques, basic medical care procedures, weather prediction methods, and other survival skills that proved invaluable during extended isolation. Most critically for long-term survival, they established a sophisticated fuel-sharing system that pooled coal, kerosene, and wood resources across all connected households, then implemented rotating heating schedules between houses on carefully calculated intervals designed to conserve fuel while preventing any building from reaching dangerous temperatures that could lead to frozen pipes or health emergencies. Each house would receive concentrated heating for a 4-hour period every third day, maintaining minimal background warmth through shared heat circulation via the tunnel system during non-heating periods. This system maximized fuel efficiency while ensuring that no household faced life-threatening cold temperatures during the harsh winter months when outside temperatures frequently dropped below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The system operated on complete silence above ground during all daylight hours, when any unusual activity might be observed by potential external witnesses. Participants developed a complex communication protocol using coded knocks transmitted through water pipes that connected to the tunnel system, creating a secure communication network that could not be intercepted or detected by outside observers. 3 quick knocks followed by 2 slow knocks indicated all clear for movement and normal operations. 2 quick knocks indicated emergency requiring immediate attention and response from available personnel. 1 long knock meant abort all movement due to potential external observation or security risks that could compromise the entire operation. No participant discussed the tunnel network during daylight hours or in any location where sound might carry beyond connected houses and reach unvetted individuals. All supplies moved exclusively during the midnight to 4, 1 p.m. period when any surface noise would be attributed to settling houses, winter weather effects, or other natural causes rather than human activity. Each house maintained completely normal external routines to avoid attracting attention from any potential outside observers, including maintaining smoke from chimneys during designated heating periods to suggest normal heating activity, keeping snow cleared from front walkways to indicate ongoing occupancy, and ensuring that curtains and window coverings appeared consistent with normal household activity patterns. What appeared to casual observation to be 7 isolated households struggling independently through a harsh winter was actually a coordinated survival operation with centralized planning, shared resources, and collaborative decision-making protocols that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of community organization, resource optimization, and operational security procedures. Then came the soldiers. On January 18, 1945, according to Cordelia's records confirmed by military transportation logs discovered in 1962 during a comprehensive review of wartime logistics operations, 12 U.S. Army personnel arrived in Millbrook during a blizzard that had been building intensity for 36 hours and showed no signs of diminishing. Their convoy, consisting of 2 military trucks designed for winter operations and a jeep equipped with snow tires, had become separated from a larger unit during transportation from a training facility in Maryland to a winter survival school in western Pennsylvania. Radio equipment had failed due to moisture damage during the storm when melting snow infiltrated electronic components, leaving them without communication capability. Their maps, prepared by Regional Command based on pre-war information, showed Millbrook as a designated supply waypoint with expected military presence, communication facilities, and civilian authorities capable of providing assistance to transiting military units. Instead, they found no military installation, no communication equipment, no civilian authority capable of providing substantial assistance, and no obvious means of establishing contact with their parent unit or regional command structure. The town appeared largely abandoned, with most houses showing minimal signs of occupancy and no visible community organization or leadership structure. The 12 soldiers represented a mixed unit with varying specialties and experience levels drawn from different military occupational categories. Their commanding officer, Staff Sergeant Rupert Kelso, was a 34-year-old career soldier from Delaware, with extensive training in winter operations and survival techniques acquired through assignments in harsh climate environments, including Alaska and northern Canada. His service record, obtained from military archives in 1963, showed previous assignments where he had developed expertise in cold weather survival, improvised shelter construction, resource conservation under extreme conditions, and leadership of small units operating independently without external support for extended periods. The unit included 2 medics with battlefield trauma experience gained during combat operations in Europe, 3 communications specialists carrying non-functional radio equipment who possessed technical knowledge about electronic systems and repair procedures, 2 mechanics trained in vehicle maintenance under extreme weather conditions, 2 supply sergeants responsible for inventory management and resource distribution, and 3 infantry soldiers with experience in reconnaissance operations and perimeter security procedures. They established temporary quarters in the abandoned train station, a brick building constructed in 1912 with a partially intact roof and walls that provided some protection from wind and snow but lacked heating equipment, electricity, or running water. The building offered more space and better structural integrity than attempting to shelter in vehicles exposed to extreme weather or constructing improvised outdoor positions that would provide inadequate protection. Their supply situation was calculated for a maximum 6-day mission with expected resupply opportunities at designated waypoints. Food rations included standard military field rations designed for cold weather consumption, but quantities were insufficient for extended isolation beyond the planned mission duration. Cold weather gear was appropriate for brief exposure during normal military transportation operations, not for extended winter camping in unheated buildings where temperatures could approach outside ambient levels. Weapons and ammunition were adequate for basic security needs and standard military procedures, but the soldiers carried no heavy equipment suitable for major construction projects, extensive shelter improvement, or long-term survival operations that would require substantial engineering capabilities. Staff Sergeant Kelso made initial contact with several civilian households on January 19th, seeking information about communication facilities, transportation options, or civilian authorities who might provide assistance in establishing contact with military command or arranging evacuation when weather conditions improved. The responses he received indicated a community struggling with basic survival needs, but apparently unwilling or unable to provide substantial assistance beyond minimal courtesy and basic information about local conditions. What happened next, as documented in both military service records and civilian accounts discovered decades later, represented an extraordinary coordination between military necessity and civilian resourcefulness that challenged conventional assumptions about survival hierarchy, leadership structures, and resource management during crisis situations. The soldiers needed immediate shelter superior to their exposed train station quarters, eventual communication capability with military command, and secure evacuation routes when weather conditions permitted safe travel. The civilian network needed physical protection from potential external threats, additional manpower for expanding their tunnel survival system beyond current capacity, and access to military supplies, expertise, and organizational capabilities that could improve overall survival prospects. Cordelia approached Staff Sergeant Kelso on January 20th, exactly 2 days after the soldiers' arrival, during a brief period when the storm had decreased in intensity sufficiently to permit safe movement between buildings without risk of becoming lost in blowing snow. Her proposal, detailed in both her personal records and in Sergeant Kelso's military log, was elegant in its practical simplicity and strategic sophistication. The existing tunnel system could provide concealed housing for all 12 soldiers with protection superior to the exposed train station, complete invisibility from external observation, access to the established civilian resource-sharing network, and protected routes for reconnaissance expeditions designed to establish communication with outside military units when conditions permitted. In exchange for these accommodations and integration into the civilian survival system, the soldiers would provide security for the civilian population against potential threats, assist with heavy labor needed to expand tunnel operations to include additional houses, and contribute military supplies, expertise, and organizational capabilities to improve the overall survival system for the entire community. The sergeant's initial skepticism, according to his own service log discovered in 1962 among personal effects donated to the Army Historical Foundation by his widow following his death in 1961, lasted exactly 47 minutes from the time Cordelia first explained her proposal. One underground tour of the tunnel system, guided by Cordelia through passages she had personally cleared and reinforced over the previous 2 months, convinced him that this civilian-designed survival network was more sophisticated, better organized, and more strategically sound than anything in his previous military experience spanning 12 years of service. His log entry for January 20th reads, "Civilian survival system exceeds military field manual recommendations for cold weather operations. Structural engineering, resource distribution, and operational security protocols demonstrate advanced planning capabilities. Recommend immediate integration of military personnel into existing civilian command structure under civilian leadership." Over the following 8 weeks, the integrated civilian-military operation expanded to include every remaining household in Millbrook's Central District, creating a comprehensive survival community that combined civilian innovation with military discipline and expertise. The expansion process required careful planning to maintain operational security while incorporating individuals who had not been part of the original tunnel network and might not understand the importance of absolute secrecy. Soldiers provided security during tunnel expansion projects with armed guards positioned at surface observation points to monitor for potential external threats while construction work proceeded underground. Military personnel contributed heavy labor for major construction projects, including reinforcing tunnel supports with engineering techniques learned in military construction training, expanding storage areas to accommodate increased supplies, and improving ventilation systems using military engineering principles that ensured adequate air circulation for larger populations. Civilians shared food preservation techniques developed over generations of rural living, local weather prediction knowledge based on years of observing regional climate patterns, and resource conservation methods that maximized the utility of limited supplies through techniques unknown to military survival training. The combination of military discipline and civilian innovation created capabilities that exceeded what either group could achieve independently. The tunnel system grew to encompass the entire town center, with supply caches positioned at strategic intervals for emergency access, communication posts equipped with improvised signal systems, and emergency medical stations stocked with combined civilian and military medical supplies that created comprehensive healthcare capabilities despite the absence of professional medical personnel. But the most remarkable aspect of this collaboration was its complete invisibility to external observation and the sophisticated methods used to maintain this concealment over extended periods. When the first reconnaissance aircraft flew over Millbrook in early March, conducting aerial surveys to assess winter damage and civilian survival status, they reported a town that appeared abandoned and uninhabitable, with no signs of organized civilian activity or military presence. When ground patrols finally reached the area via cleared mountain roads on March 22nd, after road crews had spent weeks removing accumulated snow and ice, They found what seemed to be a handful of struggling survivors, barely managing individual household subsistence with no indication of community organization or collaborative survival efforts. The tunnel system had allowed an entire community to vanish underground while maintaining the surface appearance of wartime abandonment and individual desperation. This achievement represented one of the most successful civilian concealment operations of the entire war period, accomplished without military training, sophisticated equipment, or external support. Staff Sergeant Kelso's final report, classified until 1963, described the operation as the most effective civilian survival coordination witnessed during 4 years of military service, spanning multiple combat zones and survival situations. He recommended the tunnel methodology for inclusion in military survival training programs and suggested that civilian innovation capabilities had been systematically underestimated by military planners. That recommendation was never implemented due to classified document procedures and post-war organizational changes. The operational details remained buried in bureaucratic files until the 1967 archive discovery brought them to public attention for the first time. Cordelia's own account provides the most compelling perspective on the psychological aspects of underground survival and the personal costs of maintaining such an operation. Her entries describe the gradual transformation of fear into methodical planning, the way isolation became self-reliance, and how the loss of external structure created space for innovations that would never have emerged during normal times. She documented sleep schedules that maximized rest while ensuring continuous security coverage, resource allocation formulas that balanced individual needs against community survival, conflict resolution procedures that maintained cooperation under extreme stress, and maintenance protocols that kept the tunnel system functioning reliably throughout the harsh winter months. The human cost, however, was substantial and carefully recorded. 3 elderly residents died during the winter, primarily from respiratory complications exacerbated by underground living conditions despite the community's best efforts to provide medical care. 2 soldiers sustained injuries during tunnel expansion work that required extended recovery periods. Everyone lost significant weight despite careful rationing and resource optimization. The psychological strain of months-long underground existence created lasting effects that participants rarely discussed in post-war interviews when questioned by military historians and social researchers. The combination of confined spaces, limited natural light, constant security concerns, and social isolation from the outside world created mental health challenges that persisted long after the crisis ended. When spring arrived and normal transportation resumed in late March, the tunnel system was systematically sealed and abandoned according to predetermined protocols designed to eliminate evidence of its existence. Participants returned to surface, living without public acknowledgement of their underground community, maintaining the secrecy that had protected them throughout the winter months. Most participants never spoke about the experience, even to family members, maintaining operational security practices that continued long after any security need had passed. The soldiers were reassigned to different units and scattered across various postings, preventing them from discussing their experience as a group and ensuring that official military records remained fragmentary and incomplete. The official record shows only that Millbrook experienced a harsh winter with limited civilian casualties, and that a small military unit successfully completed winter survival training in the area. No mention of tunnels appears in any official document. No documentation of civilian-military cooperation exists in standard archives. No recognition of Cordelia Vance's organizational achievement appears in any public record from the immediate post-war period. She continued living in the house on Maple Street until her death in 1963, maintaining the habits and preparations that had enabled survival during the crisis winter, Neighbors described her as quiet, self-sufficient, and remarkably prepared for any emergency that might arise. She maintained extensive food storage, multiple heating systems, and detailed weather prediction records that demonstrated continued application of survival knowledge gained during the tunnel operation. She never remarried despite receiving several proposals from men who recognized her capabilities and independence. She rarely traveled beyond town boundaries, preferring the security of familiar surroundings and established systems. She maintained correspondence with several tunnel operation participants, but never in writing, that mentioned their shared experience. The tunnel entrances in her basement remained accessible until the house was demolished in 1965 for commercial development that transformed much of the town center. New owners found the hidden passages during construction and sealed them permanently, considering them structural hazards rather than historical artifacts worthy of preservation. The other tunnel access points throughout town were similarly discovered and closed during various renovation projects over the following decade, as Millbrook modernized and expanded. No effort was made to preserve any portion of the system that had saved dozens of lives during the war's end. Today, no physical evidence of the Millbrook tunnel system remains. The participants, both civilian and military, died without leaving detailed public accounts of their underground community experience. The 1967 document Discovery represented the only comprehensive record of an operation that demonstrated civilian innovations could equal or exceed military survival techniques under extreme circumstances. But the broader implications extend far beyond simple historical documentation or wartime survival techniques. The Millbrook case study provided evidence that traditional assumptions about crisis leadership, resource management, and survival hierarchy often fail under real-world conditions where practical knowledge and collaborative organization prove more valuable than formal authority structures. Cordelia Vance succeeded not through dramatic heroic action or individual strength, but through methodical observation of existing infrastructure, careful resource assessment and planning, collaborative coordination with neighbors, and the intellectual courage to propose unconventional solutions to life-threatening problems when conventional approaches had failed. Her tunnel strategy was ultimately based on 4 practical principles that remain relevant for any survival situation. First, recognize that existing infrastructure often contains hidden capabilities that can be repurposed for emergency use through careful analysis and creative thinking. Second, understand that community survival depends more on systematic organization than on individual strength, resources, or heroic action. Third, accept that effective crisis management requires combining different types of expertise rather than relying on single sources of authority or knowledge. And fourth, maintain operational security by ensuring that survival activities remain invisible to external observation while building internal trust and cooperation. The documents discovered in 1967 were immediately recognized as historically significant by Dr. Patricia Morse, a military historian at Pennsylvania State University who was researching civilian contributions to wartime survival and defense efforts. Her analysis, published in the Journal of American Military History in 1969, noted that the Millbrook operation demonstrated sophisticated understanding of logistics, engineering, and community coordination that exceeded many official military survival programs. The papers were subsequently donated to the Pennsylvania Historical Society, where they underwent professional preservation treatment and were cataloged as the Cordelia Vance Collection. Copies of her maps, logistics notes, and daily survival records were provided to the U.S. Army Heritage and Education Center, where they became part of a classified study on civilian survival techniques initiated in 1970. Sergeant Kelso's military records were declassified in 1975 following a Freedom of Information Act request by military historians researching wartime survival operations, providing corroborating evidence for civilian accounts and official confirmation of the tunnel operation's effectiveness from military perspectives. Additional documentation emerged throughout the 1970s and 1980s as family members of other participants discovered personal papers, photographs, and correspondence related to the winter of 1945. These materials, while fragmentary and incomplete, confirmed the basic accuracy of Cordelia's records and provided additional perspectives on the psychological and social dynamics of long-term underground survival. In 1983, following a campaign by local historical societies and veterans organizations, a historical marker was installed near the former location of Cordelia's house on Maple Street, recognizing Millbrook's civilian war effort without specific mention of the tunnel system or classified operational details. The inscription reads, "In memory of those who maintained hope through the winter of 1945. Most contemporary passers-by assume the marker refers to general wartime hardship, rather than to one widow's extraordinary engineering of community survival." The story found us today because someone, somewhere, made the routine decision that mundane documents deserved preservation rather than disposal. In basement archives and municipal storage facilities across thousands of communities, similar accounts wait for discovery, reminding us that history's most important lessons often emerge from the most ordinary circumstances, recorded by the most unlikely witnesses, preserved through the most accidental discoveries. Cordelia Vance understood something that military manuals rarely teach and that modern emergency preparedness often overlooks: that survival depends less on individual heroism than on community coordination, less on dramatic action than on methodical preparation, less on strength and resources than on systematic thinking and collaborative problem-solving. Her legacy lives not in monuments or official recognition, but in the quiet demonstration that ordinary people, facing extraordinary circumstances, can create extraordinary solutions through nothing more complicated than careful observation, collaborative planning, and the courage to implement unconventional ideas when conventional approaches prove inadequate. The tunnel trick that saved Millbrook remains available to anyone willing to look beneath the surface of existing infrastructure, to coordinate effectively with neighbors, to share resources systematically, and to maintain hope and organization through the longest winters.